we're about to study Parashat Shavua, and as you know, outside of Israel, we'll catch them up soon, but because of the second day of Shavuot was a Shabbat, and here we celebrate 2 days, so therefore the Torah portion of the week in the diaspora is different than the reading in Israel, but we will catch them very soon, just a matter of okay. Parasha is Parashat Korach, Bamidbar, book of Numbers, chapter 16. And there is a famous saying, very well-known saying, that nations does not learn from their mistakes are doomed to repeat it. And it's a mark, a stigma on our people's history that tragedy like that occurred. But soon we'll see together that there are numerous lessons we can learn. So let's just get over the concept, which I'm sure you're familiar. It was a time of the desert. Our people traveled from Egypt, leading to the land of Israel, the promised land, under the leadership of Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, and his brother Aaron. And one fellow, a relative cousin of Moses and Aaron by the name of Korach, who was either the wealthiest or one of the most affluent individual, he rebelled against the leadership of Aaron. In a way, he rebelled against Moses, but most of the rabbis agree that it was a rebellious against appointing his brother Aaron. And he got together with him unfortunately, great influence of 250 leaders and others who joined him, and it was a very, very sad, tragic ending. So the story of Korach can teach us a lot of lessons, but let's first see just the narrative, the text itself. So the text itself, in short, Vayikach Korach, it was a cousin of Moses and Aaron by the name of Korach. The Torah gives us his lineage. He was son of Yitzhar, son of Kehat, son of Levi. They don't mention that Levi was also son of Jacob. There's a reason for that, obviously. He got together with him, ניתן and Aviram, these two fellows that have early issues, the whole idea of leaving Egypt. They have issue with Moses and Aaron. And also, it was On, son of Pelet from tribe of Ruth. What's the mechanism of all of them? Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman explained to us. Ramban was a great scholar in Spain, 13th century. And he explained to us that it's because it's a collection of people who are bitter and disappointed, and it's just get together all those people who are disappointed and make them as a one team, as one group. But it's much deeper, because when you have this campaign, you can call it political campaign, you can call it clandestine, surreptitious campaign, but it was a campaign against the leadership. And obviously, it creates friction between families, between people. And I assume you all know the Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, in the Ethics of the Father. The Mishnah wants to give us examples of machloket, disputation, and there are two types. The Ethics of the Fathers, they tell us there is a machloket l'shem shamayim, meaning there are disputations for the sake of heaven. There are disputations that not. Disputation for the sake of heaven is a disputation, for example, between Hillel and Shammai. Hillel and Shammai was two well-known Talmudic sages at the early part of Talmud, which is almost 2,000 years ago. And in our modern days language, they are friends, but they agree to disagree with certain concept of halakha. Example to that is a Mishnah in the tractate Brachot that speaks about grace after meal. Hillel and Shammai have different views. Both of them agree that one who eats meal should make a bracha, birkat hamazon, a blessing, grace after meal. Shammai hold that no matter where you are, you have to return the place you ate and make a grace after meal. Hillel, however, hold that wherever you are, you can make that blessing. So in other words, they are friends, just disagree on certain halachic concept, which we call in our modern days, for the sake of heaven, the Shem Shamayim, meaning their intent is total pure. Their differences in opinion doesn't by any means demonstrate their appreciation of each other and friendship. Korach, however, in his assembly, it was a total different campaign. It was a personal jealousy, envy, lust of honor, and using the most demagogic campaign, trying to divide the people, try to create bigotry and hatred between people. And the consequences obviously was beyond horrific. You read carefully the text on page 861 and the following page, it was such a highest level of fight and energy of hate that creates a dividedness between people. And it went so bad that it was kind of competition. One group carries a pen with fire, and versus Moses and Aaron. And unfortunately, it turns to a level that Moses said, something that God never instructed him by any means. He says, if that's the case, after he tried to please them and everything, and he couldn't, he says the earth will open its mouth and swallow them, then you know that it's not my idea, it's God's idea to appoint my brother Aaron as the high priest. Now, before he finished the sentence, the great prophet of the prophets, Moses, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them. It's a very, very sad ending, because if you read carefully the text, it wasn't just them, it was unfortunately the wives, the children, the infants, all of them was swallowed. If you read on page 865, when Moses finished his line, the earth that was unpredicted and unintended crisis, the earth, the ground opened its mouth, and and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with the household, all Korach's people and their possessions. It's just very heartbreaking to read how things end up, this type of fight. And the rabbis tells us that when the Mishnah referred to us as a forsake of heaven, when you see fight and you should not get involved, and you always should ask yourself, is that something, quote unquote, for the sake of heaven or other? If you're not sure, stay away from that, because it only brings a negativity and not bring any good to anyone. The problem with this story is that you maybe think that that's a problem solving. They have a conflict, and Moses came up with a conflict resolution by asking God to create a phenomena, and then goodbye. They're all swallowed. But the result was very bad because people still believe in that. They said, "V'chol Yisrael asher smivotehem," you know, they are runaway, and you think that it's okay, they change their mind, they really follow. But page 866, verse 6, the following day, guess what happened? The next day, the whole community railed against Moses and Aaron. And what they have against them? They said, you, Moses and Aaron, have brought death upon God's people. So it means you think that the conflict resolution that Moses had with the earth open its mouth and swallow them, it's simple. Then we wish every conflict resolution something unnatural happen and goodbye. But here, no, people the next day blame Moses and Aaron for doing that. And guess what happened? As a result, it was a plague from God, which means God interfered here and said, it's me, it's not them. And he went so bad that if it wasn't Moses and Aaron that took this Torah, this incense, and stood, verse 13, between the living, the dead and the living, the plague will continue. And unfortunately, and we may add unnecessarily, 14,700 died in addition to people who died because of Korach. What a tragic ending. Now, before we go to the details and why it happens and what happens, let's understand the challenge. What exactly Korach's claim, and if there's any justification his claim? He said, everybody is holy, everyone is holy. You took the leadership upon yourself. So it appears that he challenged Moses, but if you examine the text, he challenged the idea that Aaron, his brother, became the highest powerful person, the high priest. Now, Korach himself have everything. He have honor, he have wealth, he have everything. So we examine several times the story and sees that it wasn't a real motivation of service the people. And here I'd like to share with you a very important message from the former chief rabbi of England, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, who said, and I quote, he called it servant leadership. And he said, sometimes the worst mistakes we make are when we project our feelings onto others. That's when Moses tried to please them and talk to them and convince them that they are wrong. And Rav Sachs continued and said, Korach was an ambitious man, so he saw Moses and Aaron as two people driven by ambition, what setting themselves above God's congregation. Korach did not understand that in Judaism, to lead is to serve. Those who serve do not lift themselves high, they lift other people high. And this is a very important concept that people misconstrue what is leadership all about in Judaism. In Judaism, when you are appointed in any job, not necessarily clergy, can be even administrating. If you are Prime Minister of Israel, if you are a president of a community and more, it's not necessarily the clergy or only clergy. Anybody who's holding a position in a Jewish community is to serve, to be serving the public. It's not something that a person should look for the recognition, honor, personal gain, or any form of something to do with his or her need. The rabbis tells us that the reason the Kohanim stand up on the bima and bless us is because they are the pipe, they are the channel that transmitted to us, but the Kohanim themselves, they are only in our language a pipe. That's the reason why they do the Birkat Kohanim. They use the word be'ahava, which means is a commandment upon the Kohanim to transmit their blessings with love. Rabbis go further to say that the Kohen that have some bad feeling or hatred, he should not go up on the Duchan and bless us, because he basically carries the pipe, the channel that transmits blessing from God to us. So with that said, we go a little deeper with the text, and in the text we see two different avenues of understanding the whole rebellious here. One is the great rabbi that lived in the Rashi's time, which is 11th, early 12th century. Name is Rabbi Abraham ibn Ezra, great Sephardic rabbi. The other side is a little later, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, the one who mentioned the Nachmanides. Ibn Ezra said that all this parasha is not located properly in the right place in the Torah, but since we hold that our Torah is not a historic book that have a chronological order, therefore it should be part of the rebellious of the firstborn. Let's understand. Early time in the ancient world, a firstborn son carries a lot of privileges. And originally speaking, the firstborn son, if we go by Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, Jacob and Rachel and Leah, then the first son was Reuven. And therefore, he, in our simple language, deserved the right to be called the first son. Unfortunately, we read in several places 2 weeks ago that after the golden calf, and when Moses called and said, "Who's for God, come to me," and the tribe of Levi get together around him, as a reward, it was a big change. From now on, it's not the right of the firstborn. From now on, the Levi will be the people who are in charge. Meaning, Ibn Ezra said, the reason of the rebelliousness is because the feeling that the honor of the first son and the privileges that first sons have should stay there and should not be replaced by the Levi. And some people, Ibn Ezra said, expected that it was some type of Moses and Aaron's idea, mainly in order to appoint his brother as the high priest. And Korach, who was the firstborn to his father, and also the presidents of those tribes that joined him, they basically said the entire congregation are holy, and therefore, since the Torah said earlier, sanctified to me, God said, every firstborn, so they all carry this pan in the fire, because we are the people in charge and not the Levi. So the reason that you have others join them is because they are all rebel against the desecration of the firstborn rights. The idea of the firstborn of Leah and Jacob was Reuben versus his second wife, her sister Rachel, and her first son Joseph. So the transmitting the right from Reuben to Joseph, they bothered them. They suspected that Moses did it in his own initiation in order to uplift his servant Joshua, his descendants of Joseph. And therefore, Moses responded and he said, you should know at the time of anger, he said, that God instructed me to do all of that, and it's not from my heart, which means I did not intend to switch the Levites to take over the firstborn and transmit the firstborn from Reuben to Yosef. Based on that, we may understand the famous question. You see the first pasuk, the first verse in the parasha, the lineage. Korach is the son of heart of Levi, and it should be Yaakov, which in the book of Chronicles they have Israel. The reason is because Rashi tells us that Jacob did not want to be part of that fight, but there are others who explain that it may be challenging the whole Jacob's story, because what happened in Jacob, we all know that Jacob took the firstborn from his brother Esau, right? Originally, if you go by the way that the babies, the twin was born, Esau came a few seconds before Jacob, but then he purchased, and it was a big to-do between the two brothers. And also when Jacob switched his hand, when he blessed Ephraim and Manasseh. So therefore, they try to turn the clock backward and to go by the ancient idol worshippers, which is the first right of the firstborn come first before anyone else. That's the Ibn Ezra view. The Ramban said that it is true that it was the issue of firstborn, but that wasn't just that. It was much more. It was mainly the idea of appointing people and interests and political gains. And the modern days politics, you see it a lot, that who is chose, nepotism, relatives, friends, people who have some interest and more. So that's basically the claim. But be as it may, unlike modern days, the rabbis tells us that that type of machloket, that of disputation, was once in lifetime, meaning that in our modern days language, Moses was 100% right and Korach was total wrong. Most of the cases, you always have to hear both sides, and both sides can make sense, and you get confused which side is right, which side is wrong. And therefore, the advice for us is to stay away from any type of fight or disagreements, because it's usually not for the sake of heaven, not for something that really benefits us, the constituencies, the community, and things like that, is for other reasons. Obviously, the story of Korach is a lesson for life, for all of us. Unfortunately, you see sometimes even a family fights. And I don't have to tell you that nothing worse than the family fights. There's a famous story about the Chafetz Chaim. Chafetz Chaim was a great rabbi in the old Lithuanian world in the city of Radin. And the Chafetz Chaim saw two people in his shul, in his congregation, that they are fighting very bitterly. And he said to one of them, you know, this fight's going on for a long time. And I noticed that you children, young children, are very ill. And one of them is in the, like modern day ICU. And you may going to lose your kids over that. And the guy answered the Chafetz Chaim in Yiddish. And he said to him, I will lose them all, but I win this fight. Which is frightening to even think how bad bigotry or animosity or fight can go, and how wrong people can be with this. So Korach is an example of a person that destroyed not only himself and all the leaders who joined him, but you read in the text, heartbreaking text, and you ask yourself why the little children, you see it several times in the text, that when the crisis before, it was also the little one, the tough. And you ask yourself why they need to suffer, why they punished. The simple way the rabbis tells us, basic the Kabbalistic rabbis and others, they said that the moment the judgment befall upon people, then it takes place on everyone. It means that in our modern days, when the Satan comes in, unfortunately, he's not differentiate between anything. He just bring judgment, and that's it. You see it in the experience that we have in the past several months with the virus, that doesn't differentiate between good and bad people, and more is just something that happens, and it's something that we need to do self-search and understand what's the causes and how can we be better. But this should not happen. I see, Joel, you have a question to ask me. You know what, David, can you unmute everyone so I can hear the questions, please?
Everyone can unmute themselves.
Yes, yes, please. Yes, Joel.
My question is this, Rabbi. How is it that Korach and Datan and Abiram survived the golden calf incident? What was their role during that? Were they helping Moses, or were they on the side, or were they part of the golden calf? I mean, they obviously weren't slaughtered after the golden calf incident, but I'm wondering whether they were allied with Moses at the time or not. I know it's not in the text.
Yes, David.
Korach was a Levi, and the Levi, all the Levium aligned themselves with Moshe Rabbeinu at in the sin of the golden calf. So that's certainly the case with Korach.
Okay.
But Datan and Abiram were from Reuben. So, Rav, how would you?
Obviously, as you said, the story of Korach is part of the tribe of Levi. So they are the people who join Moses and Aaron and get rid of those about 3,000 people that remained in the golden calf. But I suggest that we should leave for a second the details of the story and understand. We always say that our Torah is a living Torah, and there are messages that applies to our lives. We're living in an era of hopefully post the virus, who knows, but we live in an era of great uncertainty. We live in an era of 2020. So we have always to think, what is this parashat talk to me about my life, about every one of us' life? And unlike other parashiyot, we need to dig deeply. I think in Parashat Korach, it's basic and it's simple. You can start with the idea of what is the leadership. And in Judaism, as we said, leadership is to serve, is not to get recognition or gain personal honor out of leadership. It's service of people. We can understand the concept of fight and disputation, and how easily for us, when you see a fight, to examine and to know if it's something I should get involved or I'll stay away. Because unfortunately, media, for example, make a living toward blood, meaning bring two people, and one said something and the other one, we just want to react to what the other person said. And the moment there's more blood going on in fights, the more customers, the more viewership. And obviously, that's not the spirit of Judaism. That's not Judaism is all about. And we should not be gullible and persuaded by those media tool of marketing or gaining customers by listening to parties. In short, anything that involved with animosity and hates and hearing lashon hara and evil gossip against others, we should always examine. One, we need to hear both sides. As you know, for several years, I was serving the Bet Din in Brooklyn. There were several Batei Din, and they asked me to be a representative. So when I was involved in this, I have basic rules, which is you have to hear both sides before you even go further with anything. And that's very different than a secular court. If you go to attorney, he or she is just representing the sides that they are representing, not necessarily taking or believing or hearing the story the way it should be. And the beauty of Judaism is that we not only need to hear both sides, but we have to have a self-search and ask ourselves, why do I need to get involved in this? And what exactly I gain for the tikkun olam, for my purpose in life, the community? And this is a serious question. My Rebbe used to say, we should always imagine that God is here and watching you, and you ask yourself, is God really happy of what I'm doing now? This is something that we should take to heart, because unfortunately this is part of people's routines to either watch or be involved or go to meetings, and you see people in disagreements, and for some people it's just giving them a breathing of life. By our spirit of Judaism, it's a total oppose any type of. The only disputation that we allow in our families, in our communities, is Hillel and Shammai, which means that the students of Hillel and students of Shammai, they married each other, they are best friends with each other, they have halachic views when it's come to halachic rulings that it's different, but overall they are best friends. That's really the area that we allow machloket, we allow disputations.
ענה בכוח גדולת ימינך תתיר צרורה. ענה בכוח גדולת ימינך תתיר צרורה. קבל